it's going to be extended to 24 clubs. So I suppose the beauty of it for us was that when it kicked off initially, people were a little bit apprehensive of what it was and the whole lot. So I think really where it came to fruition was when actual clubs started to understand like what it was going to bring to them, right? So I suppose for us, and I'll go through a little bit more details later on, but I suppose it started in 2017 with 8, and now we've grown it to 24 clubs.
Excellent. And I suppose, Noel, initially it was like the larger urban clubs that came into it.
Yeah, I suppose when we kicked off initially, we would have had Naas, Selbridge and Maynooth were in it, and then Salins, Confi, and Kilcock. So they were the original ones. So I suppose they were bigger clubs that were kind of dual. And then I suppose the smaller clubs then, which one of them would be my own club, which is St. Kevin's. And we're lucky enough that Conor works for us. He's out of Salins, but we're lucky to have him in our club, and he'll go through in a little bit more details of the other clubs he shares with. But I suppose one of the reasons that we probably had a look at it to take it on board was that we kind of did a little analysis of our own schools, which we would have 3 of them in the St. Kevin's club. Okay, so basically we'll go through a little bit more detail of them in a few minutes. But one of the reasons that we would have wanted to come on board was that obviously the teachers that were working in our schools basically had not much interest in Gaelic games. So as a club, we felt we needed to do something on that. And then the GPO was a good reason to get them on board, to get the schools on board as well. So that was one of the reasons, the main reasons that kind of St. Kevin's would have got involved in it was for the school side of it. And then it's gradually grown then to upskilling our mentors and different things. So.
And Noel, what did your club or other smaller clubs see from the larger clubs that were in for the year or two beforehand? Obviously, there's the contribution from Leinster GAA that makes it a little bit easier. But as regards to what the club was going to get out of it, what were you seeing from the bigger clubs and the success there?
Yeah, I suppose I was lucky enough that he was in the thick of it. So I was kind of seeing where the bigger clubs were actually tapping into the primary school kids, getting them down into the club, kind of doing an analysis of where they may have a shortage of players. So at a certain age group, they were able to identify, and then they would put a bigger emphasis on a coaching block within the classes, and then to try and get those classes down into the school. So, and then obviously with that full-time person there, it was easier to set up like a school kind of a club blitz. So literally then after a block of 6 to 8 weeks or 10 weeks, they would have like an actual blitz then within the club. I suppose the fact that the GPO was going in and wearing the club colours was a massive kind of help for us. It was like a promotional tool for us that, that when Conor came into St. Kevin's, he was wearing the St. Kevin's colours. When he went over to a coffee or whatever, he was wearing their colours. So kids quickly identified with him. And I think that was one of the big lessons I would have learned, that very quickly in the bigger clubs, they got to know him. So you can imagine in the smaller clubs, the excitement when Conor is there, building that bridge, that relationship from the schools into the club, that's been massive for us.
Excellent. And just to get another little feel for what Kevin's as a club is like. So you said there's 3 schools within the parish or the townlands. So how many, classrooms is in each of those schools, and just roughly what's the breakdown of them?
Yeah, so I suppose, look, for us, we've got 3, like we're a small intermediate club within Kildare. So, but we'd have 3 feeder schools, which would be Kildare, we've got Timahoe, and we've got Staplestown. So just for example, in Kildare, you've got 97 boys, 86 girls. Timahoe has 47 boys, 47 girls. And then Staplestown has 46 boys and 54 girls. So the breakdown, each of those would obviously have 8 classes, but some of those classes are joined together. So you're looking at 4 in
3 or 4 classroom schools.
Yeah, in the 2 smaller ones, and then in Kildare you might have 5. And also Kildare kind of have a special needs class, which Conor will go into a little bit more details on how we develop that within the club as well. So we'd have a Gaelic for all as well. So it's created a relationship that, look, when you go into the primary schools, it's not just the kids that, you also help out the kids that are in the kind of this, the special classes and different things as well, which has been massive,
Yeah. And when you're playing then in your underage club football in Kildare, do you feel that every age grade, or do you just work on the 2-year blocks?
No, so we're lucky enough within the way the structure of the games are. So they have every second week then. So we play odds and evens. So we're lucky enough that we would feed from, well, they actually have a few small little blitzes for the sixes, but really from under 7 right up to minor, we'd have a team in each grade. Which, you know, has been a big help in the sense of some of those age grades we would have found we were lesser numbers. But then having Conor there and having kind of an analysis of the boys and girls within the schools, we've got extra players in there. So that's one of the advantages of having Conor, is that we can do that analysis and see where we are as a club with numbers wise, and then where we are primary school wise, and then we do the headhunting from the schools back into the club.
And say, if you can project back to before Conor came, were you always a 15-a-side club, or, you know, were you 13-a-side or 11? Or
we would have struggled. We would have struggled at certain age grades, and the benefit of Conor is probably with us nearly 3 years now. So we would see where Conor kicked off, where we were kind of lower numbers on our 10s and 11s, and that they're now 14s and 15s, and we're probably at panels of 20 odd in them. So I suppose having the fact that we maximize, you know, Conor for different things, not just games, it's kind of like fun days within the club and the whole lot. It's a great recruitment tool, and you know, so we kind of have two pathways. One is for fun, and then obviously out of that fun, then to come into the more competitive if they want as well. So that's one of the beauties of, I suppose, Conor's coaching within the school. It's fun, it's enjoyable. Sometimes they come down to the club then, and it's a little bit more competitive, and it kind of has a little fear element. So I think we've got that message across to the club, how important it is when they come down initially, is to make sure that that fun feeling is there, and that's where Conor comes into his fore then with the mentors and the upskilling and that as well. So
yeah, so there's, I suppose, that recruitment piece, and then also the retention piece as they get a little bit older.
Massive, yeah, and the retention is literally educating the mentors on, you know, what these kids want when they come down as well. So we all perceive that they all want to play with the club, but some of them are just coming down for different varying reasons, and that's where we want to try and educate. I think that's the benefit of Conor working with our workshops with the mentors. They understand that a little bit more now through the tourists and all that. It's, you know, there's skills testing that some of them love. There's games. And then there's the kind of the fitness side of it as well, the nutritionist side that Conor puts in. And so he'll go into more detail with that.
Lovely. Noel, I'll give you a wee break for a minute there, and I'll jump over to Conor. Conor, again, thanks for joining us. Just maybe your own background. So I suppose if you want to start through from going into college or what you were doing there.
Yeah, no, as Noel said, Damien there, thanks a million for having me on this evening. Yeah, my background, I come from IT Carlow, so I spent 4 years in IT Carlow there. I did physiology and health science, and then I went on to do sports rehabilitation and athletic therapy. So after coming out of that, then I was doing kind of part-time work in a physio clinic and a bit of a gym or whatever as well. So yeah, I will be kind of a very much sports background. I'm obviously playing with my club Salons. I did once upon a time fancy me chances as a dual player, but I've hung up the hurley, as they say, and I've chose the football. Yeah, playing with the intermediate team for the last few years now. So yeah, that's kind of my background in terms of education and my interest or whatever.
And then that little crossroads for you, Conor, from going from, you know, the sports therapy and maybe been with a team and taking care of their injuries and the bit of rehab and prehab and all that, to the direction of actually becoming a coach. What was that crossroads, and how did you get involved with Kildare then?
Yeah, so like, Noel won't thank me for saying this, but I remember Noel and the lads coming into my primary school, and, you know, being the GAA coach, doing a bit of schools coaching. So I always said to myself, if I ever got an opportunity to be that guy coming in with the bag of footballs, and I was heavily involved in my own club Salons, so I would have been coaching kind of either at underage or kind of under 14 teams. So as kind of developed, I was working in a gym part-time, and James Devan, you know, James, he was coming in doing spin classes, and I just said to him, I said, you know, is there any opportunities coming up in the GAA? I'd love to get involved. You know, I've done my award ones. I would love an opportunity. He said, look, there's a couple of GPO roles coming up in Kildare. He said, I'll send you on a link to apply for it. And look, the rest is history, really.
And when was that, Conor? When did you start?
I would have started in April 2018. So yeah, around April 2018 it was the starting point for me.
Okay, and was the 4 clubs that you're with there at the minute, were they your original 4 clubs, or has your clubs changed over the couple of years?
No, they're my original 4, yeah. So I've been involved with the 4 clubs that I'm with. So I've Straffan, Racoffey, Kappa, and St. Kevin's. They're my 4 clubs. Like Noel said, it's all rural clubs as well. So they're no big massive town clubs for me.
Yeah. So obviously starting in the job then, and just projecting yourself back to those initial first couple of weeks and months that you started with your 4 clubs, and that piece of getting to know them and them getting to know you. Can you just tell me how that sort of worked out? And, you know, looking back on it now, how can our clubs learn from those initial days, so when they meet their GPO in the weeks ahead?
Yeah. So like I said, not all 4 clubs are the same. So at the start, I would have met the steering. I would have had a person that chaired or led the steering committee. So Noel would have got me in contact with the steering person. Like I would have called them my kind of go-to man in the club, man or woman. So Noel and myself would have met that person, had the kind of formal introduction, shaking hands, and this is Conor, and then after that, I would have kind of nearly informally met the steering person and the steering committee. We would have had a chat. So we would have had a chat about me getting to know the club a bit better. I obviously would have known the clubs around Kildare, but I would have liked to know fill me in on kind of numbers wise around the area, the primary schools I would have been going into. So we had a kind of chat with the steering committee or the steering person the first week, 10 days. We then obviously went in. The steering person came with me to the primary schools. We had that introduction to the principal and the staff in the local school. So that first 2 weeks was very much kind of just meeting and greeting. And then, like I said, in terms of meeting coaches, because they were coffee, we met in a hall in a kind of formal way where we had sitting behind tables and chairs having a conversation. Whereas with St. Kevin's, St. Noel's Club, they underage train on a Friday evening, so we thought it might be best for me to come down, watch a bit of underage training, have a chat with a couple of the coaches, and make it a bit more kind of relaxed. So that would have been the first few weeks, or even first few days into the weeks of the role.
From those early meetings, were the clubs, did they know what they wanted to get out of you, or was it very much both of you feeling each other out at the time, or was there very clear direction, or how long did it take for that to come?
Yeah, well, see, like not all clubs are the same. So I'll bring it back to St. Kevin's. Like the guys knew that they wanted me in primary schools, and they felt there was a bit of potential to tap into primary schools, that they weren't getting the full numbers out of there. Whereas if you had come to maybe Straffan, the guys were kind of a little bit kind of confused in terms of what they needed or what they wanted. So again, that was we kind of had a bit of a chat. We had a bit of a conversation, and by the end of the 2 weeks, we had a definite plan, or a workable plan going forward. It wasn't kind of just let's feel our way out. After the first few conversations, we definitely had a workable plan going forward from all 4 clubs.
Excellent. And look, you've obviously mentioned, and I know the answers to this, but it'll be good to hear from you as well. But you've mentioned about the steering committee and the importance of that person. But just that whole communication piece from, if the adult club is involved, down through the underage section, down through a message getting to you, and you dealing with coaches on the ground and dealing with schools. So just that whole flow of communication and the importance of that.
Yeah, that's massive. That's massive. Like for me, once a week, I'm always in contact with the steering person. So whether it be an email or it might be a conversation or a text on a Friday, just to say, guys, look, this is what's happening. And like that, if there's a coach in the club, say, that wants a session or wants me to call out and maybe have a look, everything I do goes through that steering person. So like it's massively important that straight away you get to know who the GPO knows who the steering person is in the club, and everything goes through them.
And Conor and Noel, if you want to jump in on this one, so that steering person is obviously a very, very important person. So within a club, I assume sometimes it's a chairperson, sometimes it's a coaching officer. What is the best person? And I assume it's the qualities of a person as opposed to the role that they fill within the club. Conor, if you want to take that first, and then Noel, you can come in. Yeah,
so like I said, for me, I think the people involved were kind of very open and always chatting to me. Like there was never really a day or two where I'd be kind of left on red, or what I mean. I wasn't wondering, is this person responding or whatever. I think mainly the coach. Not Noel, you probably back me up on that. I think it's mainly the coaching officer that is involved in the steering person.
Yeah, Damien, I suppose from my perspective, and since the scheme started, we would have always tried to identify a very strong coaching group within a club, but then we would look for the coaching coordinator to be the actual lead person. So literally everybody in the club then knows that if they need to speak to Conor, so they would go to, in my club, it's Noel Delaney. So basically then Conor and Noel would put a plan together of work. So Conor might just say, look, I was down the other evening, but the under 11 manager came across. He wants me to come down, have a look at his team, do a little bit of work on it. Will you have a chat with him there, and we'll put it into the calendar? To be fair to Conor, he shares a calendar with his 4 coaching officers. So literally every month then they have a plan together. So there's a visual there for the clubs and they know exactly where it is. So that person that you just mentioned, that coaching officer, it just needs to be somebody that's strategically there, that's able to look at the club and say, right, okay, this is where we want to be short term, medium term, and long term. So where are we at the moment? Like, have we got enough people to come into the nursery? Right. So Conor, the nursery is going to be starting in the next couple of weeks or whatever. We need to identify people here. So we target that kind of groups in the school for the next couple of weeks, get word out that the nursery is going to be happening. So then Conor and the coaching officer have a good relationship there. They're able to just, initially kick it off. What you're looking for is someone in the nursery that might stay there for a year or two. So it's easy with Conor, builds a relationship with them. That person is there, upskills the mentors or the parents or whoever it's going to be. And then Conor is there to assist with that as well. So I suppose the coaching officer has to be approachable to people, and knows the dynamics of the time, the way the club is run. And then also, if they're not able to facilitate like a school visit, that they might have somebody that will go with Conor, to the school to plan or whatever. So it's just, look, somebody that's good at logistics, good approachable with people, and literally can just be on the phone or an email with Conor, once a week or whatever, once a month. And then Conor will back it up, but just meeting with the steering group maybe every 5 or 6 weeks within a club is very good as well, where Conor just goes into that room, has a conversation with the whole group, and they come up with a generic plan. So there's nothing festering in the background that's people think, oh, we're not getting a say here. Everybody's in the room together. Everybody's working in the same direction. So I think that's hugely important.
Yeah, lovely. So again, I suppose that person, that lead person, is ideally somebody that's not busy with other stuff, just that they have the time to commit to this.
Yeah, or sometimes it's asking the busy person that just loves coaching and loves the club, but I would be a little bit nervous to go to the chairperson of the club, because they have all the other dynamics of the club to run. So, it could be somebody that's off, the underage chairman or whatever, but the full chairman of the club is just so busy with everything else. The last thing he wants to be doing is every week is touching base with Conor, or Conor touching base with him. So, or her.
Lovely. Conor, just 2 things now we'll continue on with, but any teething problems, whether they be early or a year in with any of your clubs, again, so that our clubs can maybe identify those and plan for them before they happen?
Yeah, like obviously at the start there was the few logistical matters, like in terms of keys for opening up pitches for schools coaching, or if I was going down to do a visit maybe, or a workshop trying to get clubhouses opening, stuff like that. If I'm going into the school, I would have originally, the plan was to kind of have the club drop the gear to the school on the morning that I was going there, and then I get the gear there. But obviously we kind of talked through that and teeted that out, that it'd be better off if the 4 clubs chipped in and had given me bought a bag of balls or cones or whatever, just to, so one morning it might not happen, but I arrived to the school and I'm left with no gear at the door, that sort of way. I suppose for me, my role with 4 clubs, it was trying to get the 4 clubs to understand that I'm one person as well. So St. Kevin's might have been training on a Friday and Kappa will be training on a Friday, and the 2 clubs couldn't see, well, you're our GPO. It took a little bit of while to kind of realise, look, and that's where Noel mentioned it, that the calendar came in. So what I do now is I do 6 to 8 months, or 6 to 8 weeks in advance. So I would have each club aware, each primary school that I'm in during the day, and then like I said, if I'm out in the evening, you can see 8 weeks in advance you know, that all clubs, the 4 clubs are clear on what's going on where, so that, you know, there's no teething problems wondering why isn't our GPO in our, you know, underage training. Or I think that's all that I can think of.
And the early successes, Conor, I suppose, you know, those quick wins or those moments, early doors where a club says, yeah, Jesus, how did we ever get by without this fella before?
Yeah. Like I said, I started in April, and that summer, each club straight away had their own summer camp. So, you know, there was 4 clubs with their own summer camps, and, you know, they were getting massive numbers at them as well. So, like, obviously they might have had their own cool camps. So straight away they seen the benefit of having me, you know, there full time to run their camp during the summer. You know, they could hand it nearly, you know, entirely over to me in terms of advertising it, organising it, getting the kids down. That would have been upskilling teenage coaches included in that. So I would have, you know, before the end of the summer holidays, I would have upskilled maybe 16, 17, 18-year-olds to go and coach from the club. So everything was done within the club. That was massive. And then as well, with just your regular camps, I run athletic development or teen camps. So they were getting there was a bit of buy-in from there because they felt like, you know, there was very little for your 16, 17, 18-year-olds, even 15-year-olds that, you know, during the summer they were crying out for a camp, but they didn't want to go to, you know, your summer camp. So we put a nice name on, we got an athletic development camp, and we got massive numbers again for 15, 16, 17-year-olds across all 4 clubs.
And just here, Conor, when time of the day, was that an evening job or was it like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Or
Yeah, so the way I went it, so say you would take St. Kevin's, they would have had their club summer camp and it would have been finished at 2, and then at 2:30 till I think it was about 4:30, 5 o'clock we ran our athletic development. So the teens, the young adults would have came in, and we would have, like Noel said, might have done a nutrition lecture, we might have done a bit of S&C, we done some ball works, and then we might have got someone in to talk to them as well.
Eating it up.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's when I kind of realised, you know, there was definitely a market for that sort of stuff within my 4 clubs anyway, because they had never seen anything like this. You know, they couldn't believe that this is what the GPO could do, if you get me. Because some of my clubs, I thought it was a school coach, whereas now they're kind of seeing the benefits of it in the club. Like, this, yeah.
And Conor, I suppose the dirty question there, was there a cost on the kids attending the summer camps, and was there a cost for coming to these athletic development camps?
For the teenage ones, I think we charged them, I think it was €10, 10 or €15, but that was just to cover, maybe to get them, you know, a bit of you know, rehab gear. They might have got, you know, a massage ball and a TheraBand or something just to go home with it as well. And then if I had someone coming in to do a talk, it was purely just to, you know, to cover that, make sure it was not costing anything.
Yeah, and I suppose that the point I'm trying to make as well is that there, you know, there's potential. Obviously, it's going to be cost neutral, but there actually is potential to make a few pound on particularly your underage summer camps. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like definitely, you could look at it that way. That, you know, you definitely could during the summer, if you run your own club camp, like all the profits are going to yourself, because you can maybe just give your coaches a token thank you, you know, but most, you know, 85-90% is coming into you in terms of profit.
Lovely, thanks, Conor. You can slug away in a bit of water. I'll jump back to Noel. Noel, come back to Kevin's again, and obviously you had dealt with GPOs for probably a year before that, so you had foreseen problems that would arise and you had come up with solutions on them. But for our clubs that are on the call this evening, what would be your kind of golden nuggets of advice to give them as they're about to start out on this path?
Okay, first of all, just to clarify something, when Conor says yourself, he didn't mean himself, he means the club, all right? Just anything that's done there is it is a good revenue generator for clubs, and it can be fed back into the coaching and games, and, you know, so it's massive there. I suppose one of the key things for us, Damien, was probably to do an analysis of the club, just to know where we were and what we really wanted from the scheme. And obviously one of those things was primary school coaching. The other thing then was just to upskill the mentors, and we would have felt that a lot of our mentors were accidental coaches that were being just coaxed into doing it, that their kids were involved in it. So look, the beauty of that was that Conor was there to upskill those people then, so we knew we had a certain amount. And, you know, we needed to hit the criteria of the foundations and different things. So they were the easy wins to get all these people upskilled and use Conor's expertise to do that. And then it was just to find out off of them what kind of formal or informal training that they wanted. So it wasn't just all the time us regurgitating and saying, you have to do this course. They were coming back and saying, well, actually, we'd love to know a little bit more information on kicking or whatever it was. And then Conor would put together a workshop and that. And then I suppose out of that, a community of practice kind of has grown between the 3 or 4 clubs. So where if Conor is running something, it's generic, and you know, he's asking in 1 or 2 of the other clubs. They're sharing of ideas there between the clubs as well. So I think that was one of the things I would have thought would have been good for Kevin's, was that we got other people into our club to share some of the ideas or the problems that were going on in their clubs as well. So, but I would say the most important thing for the club is to get a good steering group together, whether keep it small and fresh at the start, where maybe it's only 2 or 3 people that are there, that, you know, they all have a vision of what they think is important for the club. I suppose for us, we would also have the ladies involved and the lads. So we have a representative from the underage boys and girls, and then we'd have 1 or 2 of ourselves on it. And then we have our coaching officer then who looks after it. So he kind of chaired the meeting with us. So then there's a representative from each part of the club that's there, really important. I suppose the fact that Conor would have mentioned the logistics of just having keys, the logistics of having our club gear for Conor the right size, and you know, the equipment side of it, you know, getting him a key for the lockup when he got down to the club, you know, they were the kind of the team things. But I would say identifying the right person within the club to lead the program is the most important thing. You know, and like obviously that person then will be very important to yourself and your GPO within the county, because like literally I would touch base with that person within each club to make sure how things are going, you know, set up a meeting every now and again just for a cup of coffee for a 15-20 minute chat, you know, because the most important thing is not to let anything fester. You know, if there's any issue, no matter how trivial they might think it is, just pick up the phone or send an email or just meet up. That's the most important thing and the advice I would give.
Lovely. Thanks, Noel. So, Noel, can you give me just an idea of what Conor's contact time is within St. Kevin? So, like, how much, say, a week or a 4-week block or a month, how much would he get within your primary schools, and then what is he getting out within the club itself on an evening or a Saturday morning or whatever?
Okay, so literally we would have Conor for 1 day a week. So we would literally, obviously we've 3 primary schools, so one is slightly bigger. So he would probably spend a block of 6-8 weeks in that primary school that we say just for Kildare. And then that new block, then he would, you know, take in Staplestown and Timahoe for 1 day. He'd do half a session with each school, and then he would just, because there's only like what 5 or 6 minutes of it transfer between each one of them, so it's not too bad. And then we'd have him down. Then obviously he do like a coach on our Friday evening is the busy time for us, because our nursery and everything happens on the Friday evening and that, so we'd use that. So Conor would be there. We wouldn't have very much activity on a Saturday, but Conor might come on a Monday night then to, we say, the older age group, so there could be 14s or 16s or the 18s or whatever, working with those mentors. And then in consultation with Noel Delaney, he might say, right, I'm going to do a workshop and such a day it is. So literally we have that. And then sometimes closer to the summer, then we might build up a bank of his hours. So we may not only see him once in that week, which is the Friday evening. And then because Conor will run the camp then for 3 or 4 days, those hours then balance out themselves, because he's with us then for the 3 or 4 days, and then he's with the next club then. So I think that's what Conor said. Like literally there is only one person driving the 3 or 4 clubs, and that's the most important thing. When people see in the calendar, they see they're getting their actual their workshop. Like some will run an Easter camp, others will run a Halloween camp. So those hours then will always get balanced back out. Some will run like maybe 2 things in on 1 week because it suits Conor and it suits the club. Okay, and then it's there. So once it's agreed and once it's in the calendar, everybody knows what's happening. So that would be the key for me.
Yeah, and important to have that flexibility between the number of clubs, that at certain times, you know, you might be smashing a school and maybe getting a bit more time there, or smashing an age group, and then at another time in the year it might just taper off a little bit.
Yeah, because like there is times of the year that we wouldn't have a lot of activity going on within the club, so then Conor uses imagination and he does like you said there, an afternoon where he will take the school's teams, where, you know, he gets a bang for buck, where he's helping out the school, get a team prepared and getting them ready. Other times Conor has run, obviously Conor does a bit of hurling as well, so he'd run pre-morning class before school even starts. So a certain amount of kids that want to play a certain sport come down for an extra 45 minutes in the morning. So one of the teachers buys in, they're there with Conor. Conor puts them through then as well. So that's where just sitting down with your steering group and planning those type of things, because let's call it spade a spade. There is certain weeks in the year where it's not possible to get into the club because there's just not people available to take it. But Conor is clever enough then to build them into a program, either coach education or something for extra activity after school as well. So
lovely. Thanks, Noel. And I suppose, Noel, is there a want within Kevin's to get more of Conor, and obviously to pay more, but so there might be the want, but is there the need to get more out of him?
Right. So we would love to say, yeah, where you would, but there's only so many days that we can get into the primary school where we don't have a secondary school associated. So as I said to you, we've 24 clubs that are involved in the scheme, right? And I'm looking at 10, 11 of those that are either full-time or sharing a coach. Every one of those have secondary schools linked into them, right? So the other 12 then that are 13, none of those that are in the where Conor works don't have secondary schools involved. So it's kind of sometimes can become, you know, you think you want more hours, but actually are you getting bang for buck by actually having the more hours if you don't have a secondary school? Or look, if you're a club and you had 5 primary schools associated to you, maybe, yeah, you'd want to look at it and say, yeah, we need more hours that way. But if you've only got 1 primary school or 2 primary schools associated, the hours that Conor will tell you, it works really well there, you know, because you can just look for extra hours for the sake of looking for it. And plus, you know, if you've only got a certain amount of teams within your club as well, like coaches kind of do get kind of peeved off thinking, oh, we have to go to another coach education thing, or, oh, we have another thing. Like every one of them would stand back and say, let Conor take the team and train the way the team. But as part of this game, and I will always stand over this, is that if Conor is doing a training session for whatever team it is in the club, that's okay once, but then the next visit, Conor then half participates with the coach coaching, and then the third visit, then Conor would just stand back, observe the coaching session, and give a little bit of feedback to the coach. So by doing one session, it's grand. Yeah, it's a guest session in and the whole lot, but the whole crux of this scheme to work is that Conor doesn't be, or the club or the team don't become dependent on Conor training that team. That's not what he's there for. He's only there to assist the team if they're struggling a little bit with their mentors, and he works closely with them and he makes them better. So it's a bit like the saying, you learn them how to fish rather than go fish for them, you know.
Yeah. Lovely. Thanks, Noel. Conor, just the last couple of questions for you, and then we'll open the floor. So if anybody wants to start typing into the text box, or you can start raising your hands and I'll call you in order. If you were to list out the 3 or 4 real benefits for your clubs of having you involved, what would you put down the top 3 or 4?
Yeah, like each club again is probably different. Like there is some general ones, like, you know, you have the tourist program, which is very good for your kind of coach education. Each 4 clubs have now their own summer camp, or, you know, club camp, I like to call it, because as Noel said, it's summer ran in summer. I'll run some of them at Easter, I'll run others at Halloween. So each club has their own club camp. But if I was to take my clubs individually, like, so say Straffan, when I went in first, they didn't really have a nursery. They did, you know, it was kind of just under 7s and that was it. So we went in first morning. I always recall it. There was 2 parents and 8 kids on my first nursery visit on a Saturday morning to Straffan. So I went down there Saturday. We have 17 coaches or parents, and we have 132 kids at the nursery now. So it's chaos on a Saturday morning, but, you know, when you can look at that, and I have a picture I always bring with me of the first visit. They're holding up the tourist cards. There's enough cards for each child, you know, that sort of way. Whereas now we've got, you know, 132 kids in a nursery. So that, for me, if you're off the top of my head, for Straffan, that's something that I'm very proud of, that we've kind of established that and we've ran that, and now it's good to go on its own. Looking at our coffee, we came up with this idea maybe 3 years ago as a festival of football during the summer, because again, our coffee came the steering committee came to me and with a chat and saying, look, we feel like there's not enough activity during the summer for our kids. And we came with this idea, you know, we had a summer camp, said, look, if we feel summer camps are done, you know, is there anything we could do? So we're doing a festival of football now where it's like a street league during 1 week. So you have a Monday, Wednesday and a Friday. And they finish off then on a Friday evening with a big barbecue, but it really brings the whole underage. So it's literally, there's a blitz from nursery right up to under 16s. Then they kind of finish off with a combined match where girls and boys play with each other, and it's a great bit of crack. So that's one thing that's very good for me in terms of our coffee, that festival of football that's running that week. Kappa, which is another one of my clubs, you know, wouldn't they played as an amalgamation before, whereas now for the last year or two, from under 14s right up, they've gone on their own. So I'm really helping supporting the coaches in terms of that. In football wise, but not only in football, now hurling as well. They've actually gone now, and for the first time ever, they've entered a junior hurling team. So they've produced young lads, and you know, all the way through. I won't say with my help, but I gave a good bit of help in terms of, you know, getting mentors upskilled and, you know, giving them, you know, their teen camps, you know, getting the underage kids to buy in. So for Kappa, I think definitely you know, pulling away from their amalgamation, you know, going on their own, and then obviously in turn getting their senior hurling team or their junior hurling team. And then St. Kevin's, I think Noel touched on it. It's probably our GA for all. Said in Kildare they have an ASD unit for kids with additional needs. So one of the mothers came to me, or went to Noel, sorry, and Noel, we kind of got in contact and we're talking about you know, putting together a team for these guys who, you know, who love GA, who love being out running around, but you know, they can't unfortunately play in mainstream GA. So like Noel said, they train on Friday evenings. We've set that up now, and that's been an absolute massive success. In terms of getting that GA for all going in St. Kevin's to facilitate, you know, kids with additional needs.
Excellent, Conor, thanks. Just the one thing that really strikes me there when you've gone through all of those 4 programs is that like, you're not some messiah that's actually making more kids within these areas, because you can't change the tradition of what a townland or a club has been for the last 10 or 12 years or 20 or 50 years. But it seems like what you are doing is that you're getting more of these kids to engage in the club, and that they're staying there for longer. And I think, you know, none of our clubs, well, possibly 2 or 3 clubs have an expanding population, but the majority of the rest of them, they are what they are, and they have been for a number of years. Yeah. But it's about maximising that resource and getting more kids playing and retaining those kids for longer. So Conor, thanks very much. Noel, thanks very much. So our first question is on there. I think it might be Fintan Edgar. Fintan, you can open your mic there, and just, if it's not you, just say who you are and you can ask your question, and then I'll call everybody else in as they come. So you can use your chat box or you can raise your hand. Thanks, everyone.
Hi lads, you just touched on it at the end there, just about player retention, and I suppose with our own club here, St. Patrick's Over, Ardham I Do would be the parent club. A huge effort was put in on the nursery in the last couple of years, and our numbers have greatly increased in that. But we would see a fall off across a couple of age groups, like a couple of pinch points. Say you're under 12, when they transition from primary cycle into senior cycle in school, and then you see a fall off again maybe at 15, 16, and then obviously the transition from underage football into adult football. Is there anything that could assist at that you could assist with those couple of pinch points of player drop off?
Yeah, I'll come in first. So I suppose just taking that one, the under 12, and that transition from primary school into the secondary school. So I know Conor would also, outside of his own 4 clubs, would work with some GPOs that are actually directly linked into, we say, Clane or into the other secondary schools around. So what they've started to do is formalise internal leagues in first year. So literally then what we're trying to do then is feedback that information to the club under 12s or under 13 manager to say, look, such and such is going into the local secondary school here. There's an internal league starting on such and such a date. Will you just send out a message, whatever it's WhatsApp, even though it's not meant to be used, whatever form of way it is. So that message would go out into the club there. So that would be one there. I think the fact that Conor and the lads would do that S&C and that kind of nutritional side of it and other sides of the game as well has been a big help within the club. So I think Conor might talk a little bit more on that, but I would definitely think it's looking at those numbers where you're dropping off and then coming up with programs that would make them interested, whether that be inviting a local parish tournament and having a 7-a-side or a 9-a-side, or bring them away out of the county just to make it interesting to play another team or whatever. So
yeah, I'll just touch on that. No, yeah, I think the big thing is that if you are establishing a like say that 12 or 13, if there's a bit of a drop off or whatever, that we do kind of put on extra programs. And that's the one thing I would always sit down with my clubs and say, look, do we need to have a program in place that that the 12s and 13s have, like Noel said, do we need to take them and have a blitz in Mead, or do we need to go to Laois and have a blitz, or like what I've ran before, the athletic development programs, put stuff on that they're going to really buy in and enjoy and see that it's not just a summer camp where we go down and get a lucky bag, but they're talking about strength and conditioning, and we would have a few contacts with the Kildare senior footballers, so we would get them in, and maybe get to do a bit of football with them, and show that that they are really important. That, as Noel said, everyone is important.
Lovely. Thanks, Conor and Noel, and thanks, Fintan. Kieran Dalton, if you want to turn on your mic there, come in ahead.
Just one point on how the clubs found the funding of this, or did you get any feedback? Like, did they find it difficult to fund it, or had they different ways of funding it, or was there anything on that?
Yeah, Kieran, sorry. Hiya, it's Noel here. So yeah, Kieran, I would probably deal more with the clubs on this side of it and get to see different examples. So some clubs are clever and tap into some local sponsors. So there is some people within the clubs that want to do something for the club, but they didn't know what to do. So they were sold, like, this is about development. This is about, offering an opportunity to youth and all this. And clubs jumped on it, or sponsors jumped on it for them. So some of the bigger clubs would have 3 or 4 sponsors which would cover it. And then some of the smaller ones, like around here, the local credit union are quite good, and they've come on board with sponsorship. So they help with the St. Kevin side of it. I know another club that use Intel give a grant to their workers, and they use that grant then to pay towards a scheme. I know another club that run a cake sale. Parents get involved and they have a big cake sale, and it's amazing the goodwill that comes then because it's going back into it. I know another club that the actual primary school give a contribution towards it because they're getting such a great benefit. The actual and then other clubs then tap in on the camps. So as Damien mentioned earlier, the cost of the camp then goes back into paying towards the GPO. So the GPO becomes nearly self-sufficient in some incidents. So I would say sponsorship is one. The second one is to run some sort of a fundraiser. I know another club just close to me that do it. They ran a 24-hour walk and made way above what they needed, and then that just goes into year 2 and year 3. So that's, hopefully that helps there, Kieran.
Very good, yeah, very useful. Thanks.
No problem.
Thanks, Kieran. Anybody else there now? We'll just let it hang for a moment. If you don't want or you can't turn on your mic, just use the speech bubble there and we can get anything.
David, if I could just add that,
sure,
I think one of the biggest things that we would have done is definitely that a need analysis of coaches, so they feel part of the program, that we're asking them what they want, to be built in for the year. So keeping them involved is massive, because it makes that easier for Conor then, or any Conor, the equivalent of Conor going into the club. There's a goodwill thing. The other thing that they would do in some clubs is at the end of the year, they would invite the GPO and the coaches in, and they might bring in a guest speaker and just have a simple little barbecue, or just a sit down, simple little thing, but as a group of people, and it creates such a good community there as well. So it's not a them and us, everyone is there, so but I would say that initially a lot of clubs get the feeling, because a Conor is coming in, that they're going to take over coaching all the teams. But I think that's really important to make sure that they know that Conor is there to assist the programs as much as anything.
Yeah, and I suppose just on that one, Conor, would or Noel even either, would you have ever encountered where a coach or a number of coaches might feel, oh, this person is in assessing me and watching me, and that I won't be good enough, and that sort of bit of resistance, or how do you, I suppose, assure people that you're always there to help and that, you know, you're not judging them?
Yeah, I think, sorry, Conor, I'll come in just quickly and then you can, basically, I suppose, just from the other coaches, like what I would find is that going out initially and taking a training session with that team and having a conversation with the coach breaks the ice. And then you say, right, I'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks' time. We'll do this together. So, right, what part of it do you want to take? What part will I take? And you co-coach together. And then the third part of that would be where they just go out and Conor would say, look, I'll have a look at you tonight. You give me a bit of feedback on what you think, and then I'll give you a little bit of feedback, and we'll work from there. So it's probably building a relationship before you actually start going out and analyzing them or whatever is the key.
Yeah, I think I just kind of add to that. Like for me, the first kind of, I'd say 6 to 8 weeks, I was very conscious of just, nearly becoming a club coach myself and making the coaches in the club feel as relaxed as possible, because, as you said, I didn't want to give the impression that I'm the teacher and you're the student, sort of way. So to make the coaches feel as relaxed as possible, I would always try and have, the bit of crack out. Before we even went out, I would have tried to meet them, whether it be for, a chat or, just to kind of introduce myself, just to make everyone kind of feel relaxed. That's the way I would approach it. But thankfully, I haven't had too many coaches now go against the grain.
Lovely. Thanks, lads. Gary, if you want to flick on your mic there and you can come in and just sort of tidy things up there if you like. It doesn't seem like anybody else has any questions. John Healy has one there, Gary, just about the financials and whether it's payments are quarterly and when's the first one due. So I suppose maybe the easiest thing is to address that with an email back to the club once we get a little bit further down the road, just with that email you sent this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. How's everyone? Just want to thank Noel and Conor tonight. We took up an hour of your time, but I've listened to every bit of it there, and it's really informative and really helpful. Some of your points are some of your nuggets of information will really help us along in Longford for this new scheme. There's just one thing that's come across our desk in the last 48 hours now. I've emailed all the people, all the secretaries of the other clubs and all the secretaries of the underage entities in Longford today, and the contacts we have. There's just a very simple form gone out to you now that unfortunately we didn't get it until last week. That can the other clubs that have applied for a GPO just fill in the sections 1 to 6 on it. It's very quick. Section 6 and 7 is the pertinent sections, because it's just outlays the funding, how you're going to organise the funding of this and what kind of financial status you have at the moment. And I think the accountants in Leinster GAA just need that to put their mind at rest, because we're going to effectively have 5, if not 6 new employees on board for Longford GAA in the next week or so. Thanks again, Conor. Super stuff there on the way you approach the whole setup in the 4 clubs you have. We're recording this, I think, Damien, are we?
Yeah, it's been recorded there. So
so there'll be others that didn't make it tonight. So we send this out to them individually as they come, because there'll be loads of questions in the next fortnight. And it was great to see from a person on the ground doing it. This is brand new for us, so it was fantastic stuff. And Noel giving us the overview from your position in Kildare is great. So really do thank you for that hour that you've given us tonight here in Longford is invaluable. Just to sum it up then, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to lock down the contracts of employment with these 5 people this week. So I do need that form back, guys, and I do apologize, very sorry for the lateness of it, but Damien and I just got it there late last week, and we didn't know we had to do this section. So if you could get that back to us this week, contracts of employment to the coaches this week. Wait for them to accept. Maybe they'll have queries because it will be their livelihood. We iron all that out in the next fortnight, and we want to have these coaches on the ground do an induction with Damien, Paddy, and Owen for the month of March, and then start full time in the clubs that they've been allocated in April. So if you look upon what's going to happen, then we're going to look at quarterly payments then on that, just to answer John Healy's question there. Invoiced on the beginning of April, payable by the end of April, something like that, and we go quarterly from there on in. So I hope that answers that question. But that's the timeline we're working towards. So yeah, looking forward to getting that in place. Damien, you chaired and presented a fantastic Q&A there tonight. So well done to you as well. So I'll just hand it back to you, Damien.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Thanks again, everybody. There doesn't seem to be anything else coming in there. So again, super thanks to Conor and Noel. Great to have their time. And look, this is what Leinster GAA is. Like, we'd be very proud, myself and Noel, on calls over the last couple of years about how Leinster really rallied around the whole COVID thing and brought a lot of new resources to the table that all these new GPOs are able to roll out and put into action. So we're very lucky that we're in a really good progressive province, and we have the opportunity to really make the best use of all of your clubs out of that. So we wish you good luck, and we'll be talking all again soon. And by all means, follow up with Gary or myself if there's any questions. So thanks, everybody, and thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Best of luck.
Cheers, lads. Thanks a million.
Thank you.